America at the end of the 19th century was in an age of unprecedented prosperity. Rail connected the country from coast to coast. Oil lamps brightened the night. And steel was being used to build structures that no one could have imagined even a decade earlier. Overseeing much of the growth were the Pittsburgh steel magnates Andrew Carnegie and Henry Frick. Together, they'd driven Carnegie Steel to massive profits. In addition, they'd established the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club.
Cheers.
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 An exclusive, members-only playground for the wealthy. But its construction had weakened the dam surrounding the lake at South Fork, posing an imminent threat to the lives of the tens of thousands of people in the valley below. Memorial Day broke in Johnstown. As ominous clouds rolled in. At South Fork, the lake levels were rising. An inch every 10 minutes.
More bags, come on.
Go, over here. We're moving. We need more men up here. Give me that bag. We need more men.
Hurry up.
Over here. Give me that bag.
John!
Need one more, quickly.
Get a telegram to Johnstown! Tell him to evacuate!
We need more men.
The message read, South Fork Dam liable to break. Notify the people to prepare for the worst. The Johnstown Telegraph Office had seen the same warning many times before. They ignored it.
Running out of time!
Leave it! Leave it! Let's get
away from the window.
When the water stopped, more than 2,000 people had died. One in 3 had been so mutilated that they couldn't even be identified. "1,600 homes had been destroyed, and over 4 square miles of the town had been completely leveled. The Johnstown flood was the worst man-made disaster to take place in the United States before 9/11. Bodies would continue to be found for years to come. Some as far away as Cincinnati, 350 miles from Johnstown. Volunteers came from across America to assist in the recovery. The flood was the first major peacetime relief effort for the recently formed American Red Cross. As outrage over the flood grew, the public looked for someone to blame. And most of that blame fell on the members of the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club. But they denied responsibility. Lawsuits were filed, but they were ultimately unsuccessful. In the eyes of an angry public, the South Fork members, including Henry Frick, had got away with murder. The incident forever changed Andrew Carnegie, who felt a sense of responsibility for the disaster, unlike many of his fellow club members. He soon dropped out of South Fork and began a campaign to rebuild his damaged image.
When your brand becomes so big that you become the name, you become the face behind the brand, it's difficult. There's also a great deal of responsibility and risk, and you have to be very, very careful.
Carnegie donated millions to help rebuild Johnstown.
Carnegie gave money to thousands of libraries, millions and millions of dollars. Carnegie wanted to be remembered for the good he had done.
Carnegie began building public monuments across the United States. One of these projects, a grand music venue in Manhattan, became his passion. Carnegie Hall continues to be one of the most prestigious music venues in the world. It opened in 1891. All of New York's high society were at the opening. The Russian composer Tchaikovsky conducted at the inaugural concert. Andrew Carnegie was treated like royalty, honored for the wonder that he'd built. But even in this setting, one man was a larger presence. John D. Rockefeller was worth 3 times as much as Carnegie. But the masterpiece that Carnegie had built, bearing his name, took their rivalry to another level.
Oh, thank you, Alicia.
The men would spend the next 10 years battling each other, sparring with Christmas gifts. Rockefeller sent Carnegie a cheap paper vest, a jibe at his simple beginnings as a poor immigrant. In return, Carnegie sent Rockefeller, a devout Baptist who didn't drink, a bottle of fine whiskey.
You know, I've had my own little rivalries. I've had a rivalry with Donald Trump where I think it was back 2004. He was giving me a hard time about something. I said, you know what? I could write a bigger check than you and not even know it's missing, because I knew if I tweaked him, he would just respond, and he did, and I still like to tweak him just because it's fun.
I always say you have to have someone to hate, to aim for. Having an enemy, having an arch enemy, having a competitor is what ups the game for everybody.
While Rockefeller's oil empire steadily grew, steel became the product of choice for the construction industry, and Carnegie also enjoyed huge profits.
Mr. Connor!
Yes, sir.
How's the output?
She's running at full capacity, sir.
Good, carry on.
Carnegie's steel helped to trigger the upward expansion of America's cities. However, if he wanted to challenge Rockefeller for the title of America's most powerful businessman, Carnegie needed to become even more profitable. But he would pay a price for his ambition, one that would threaten to destroy everything he'd worked so hard to build. The building of modern America was moving at lightning speed. Rail lines linked east to west in a way never before thought possible. Oil was burning into the night, and steel was pushing cities to unimaginable heights. Driving this growth was a rivalry between 2 men, Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller. One, the undisputed king of oil; the other, the unchallenged man of steel. Each was determined not to be outdone by the other.
I benefit from high-class competition. I've been dogged by the competition, bested by the competition a couple times, but I've had my licks too, and we managed to hold our own.
To overtake Rockefeller as the richest man in the country, Carnegie couldn't just be a profitable steelmaker. He had to be the most profitable. And for that, he needed an edge. He set his sights on a struggling steel mill outside Pittsburgh. He had plans to make it the largest in his steel-making empire. Carnegie invested millions, retooling the plant to turn out more structural steel than any other mill of its size. The Homestead Steelworks was a true modern marvel. But it couldn't operate without manpower.
One of the huge costs in a steel mill was labor. Carnegie knew that to stay profitable, he had to keep costs low. And the only way to keep costs low was to reduce wages and increase working hours.
To keep profits growing, Carnegie needed to continue cutting costs, including wages. But he was also determined to repair his image. Something he couldn't do in the midst of a labor dispute. So he turned to his chairman to do the dirty work. Henry Frick had never been concerned with what people thought of his methods. He was concerned with one thing: winning.
Carnegie didn't enjoy being a bad guy, being a villain. Frick didn't seem to mind.
I think the great leaders find partners who basically can exploit their weaknesses but not kind of dance on their strengths. Instead of hiring weaker versions of themselves, they hire people that are tremendous experts at what they're not.
Henry shows me the ledgers at the end, and that was not the number I was expecting. And the only question that remains is how much we'll make next year. Agreed.
With Frick firmly established as the chairman of Carnegie Steel, Andrew Carnegie headed to Scotland to give him room to maneuver.
The industrialists of that period of time are people who were out for themselves to make large fortunes as quickly as possible, even if it means pressing the envelope of what they have to do.
Frick began squeezing the workers at Homestead, pushing them to their very limits.
Frick decided that the only way to keep the plant running efficiently was with a 12-hour day, 6 days a week. What that meant was intolerable working conditions. No one could work 12 hours a day. If you're working in an office, you fall asleep at your desk. If you fall asleep in a steel mill, you end up dead.
You know, back when Carnegie was building his empire, obviously there were no labor laws. It was a free-for-all. And looking back, it seems horrific in a lot of different ways that workers were taken advantage of. But that was the game that was played back then.
The conditions were dangerous.
How many furnaces?
And a small group of men banded together in order to raise their concerns.
Many of the workers at the steel mill felt that change in working conditions was a necessity. They were exhausted, and they wanted wages that were livable.
Unions were relatively new in America, and Frick wasn't about to let them take root on his watch. But before acting, he saw Carnegie's counsel.
Dear Andrew, it may become necessary to fight it out this summer. Once got into, it will be fought to the finish.
Andrew Carnegie was well aware of Frick's aggressiveness. That was why he'd put 3,000 miles between them. But Carnegie preferred to leave some things unsaid.
Mr. Frick, no doubt you will get Homestead right. You can get anything right with your mild persistence.
There's a fine line. How do we protect the worker, yet at the same time continue to grease the wheels for capitalism? Sometimes those two are at cross purposes.
Frick took Carnegie's words as a clear indication that it was time to go to war. He ramped up production, pushing his men harder than ever. If there was a strike, then he'd have a stockpile of finished steel. The men were spending half of their lives working in dreadful and dangerous conditions. They were about to reach breaking point. America was growing at a staggering rate. Linked by railroads, the country was uniting for the first time. The age of steel had arrived. And Andrew Carnegie was building America's cities, erecting skyscrapers that dwarfed anything ever seen before.
Andrew Carnegie was somebody that I think in terms of, because I do buildings, and he really came up with the mass production of steel. He was the first, and he was the biggest by far, by a factor of 30 times. And what he built was unbelievable, and just got bigger and bigger and bigger.
To meet the demand for his steel, Carnegie ordered his chairman, Henry Frick, to increase production, while Carnegie himself went to Scotland. Under Frick's watch, the workers spent 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, stoking the fires of Carnegie's Homestead plant. And the conditions were pushing them to their limits.
May the Lord in his love and mercy help you. May the Lord free you from sin and save you and raise you up. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Accidents on the plant floor kept multiplying, until one proved to be fatal. The death united the overwhelmed workforce. Frick knew what was coming.
Dear Andrew, I'm not prepared to believe we will win without a severe struggle. I regret to say it does not seem that there is any other course open for us. We would better make the fight and be through with it.
Henry, one thing we are all sure of. No contest will be entered into that will fail. We all approve of anything you do. We are with you to the end.
Knowing that he had Carnegie's support, Frick threw the first punch. He told the workers that Carnegie Steel wouldn't negotiate, and that working conditions would not improve.
Frick didn't understand that the steel workers believed that the mill belonged to them. They were the ones who made the steel. You know, it was their plant. And they weren't going to let this nasty little Frick take it from them.
Under the management of Mr. Frick, the Carnegie Company has wiped out organization in the Edgar Thomson Works, has wiped out organization in the Coke region, and are about to wipe out organization in Homestead. No! The time has come to send Mr. Frick a message.
That's right.
We do not accept the new pay scale. No. We do not accept the poor working conditions. No. We do not accept the long hours.
No.
And why can we do this? Because we are a union.
Yeah!
And nobody will break us.
Yeah!
All those in favor of striking, raise your hands.
Yeah!
Mr. Frick?
I'm giving you one more chance to call off this strike. I'll make sure any man who walks out never returns.
We'll see.
Two 2,000 steelworkers barricaded the front of the plant to prevent Frick from bringing in replacements. The fight had turned personal. But Frick wasn't about to back down. He called in reinforcements. For years, the Pinkerton detectives have been a private police force, best known for tracking down train robbers. They'd even stopped a plot to assassinate Abraham Lincoln, and were then hired as the president's personal bodyguards. By the time of the strike, they'd become a mercenary army. With more men and guns than the United States military. If you had the money, they'd fight for you. And Frick had the money.
We'll enter by the river. Take them by force, if necessary. Remember your training. Follow orders. If they start shooting, we'll hit them back hard. There is no place for cowardice.
The Pinkertons were mercenaries. They were from out of town. They had no ties to Pittsburgh, no ties to these workers. They were paid a wage to wield their clubs. The moment Frick made the decision to bring in Pinkertons, the die was cast, and the only way this strike was going to end was in tragedy. Frick thought to himself, when the workers see the Pinkertons, when they see that I'm not going to back down, they will back down. He thought a show of strength, a show of resolve was all that was needed, and that would be the end. He badly miscalculated.
Hold your ground. Stay calm. Stay calm.
We're here to take possession of this property.
I suggest you turn around and go home. You're not getting in.
If you do not stand aside, we will mow every one of you down.
Blood of innocent men will be on your hands.
Tear down this barricade! Fire!
When the fighting stopped, 9 Carnegie steelworkers lay dead, while countless others suffered severe injuries. But they had managed to hold their ground. Until Pennsylvania's governor sent in the state militia to finally restore order. Homestead was back in the hands of its management. But Andrew Carnegie's problems were far from over. The public was outraged over the violence, blaming Henry Frick directly. Many demanded justice for the dead.
Mr. Frick.
The vast and rapid growth of America was in full swing. Railroads connected all 44 states. Oil was the most precious resource in the country. And steel was building the country's cities. But growth at this pace didn't come without a price. Andrew Carnegie was making more steel than anyone else in the world. To meet this level of production, his workers were on their feet 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. The dreadful conditions spurred them on to barricade the plant. Carnegie's chairman, Henry Frick, called in the mercenaries.
Fire! Shoot them! Shoot!
A bloody battle left 9 workers dead. Frick regained control of Homestead. But while the carnage was over, the public outcry was just beginning.
It was a massacre, not just in terms of the number of injured and dead, but a massacre that any civilians should be killed standing and defending their plant.
Overnight, Homestead became a searing symbol of life and death in industrial America.
Carnegie probably was appalled at what happened at Homestead. He prided himself on portraying his company as an enlightened, progressive company, which in many ways it was. What Homestead did was to cast a stain on that and on his reputation that he had a very hard time living down.
Carnegie extended his stay in Scotland, hoping that the distance would allow the controversy to blow over.
So the result is we have to pay them more. The only solution is...
But American journalists tracked him down.
Excuse me, just a word. No, gentlemen.
Mr. Carnegie, our
At another time, gentlemen.
Just a word.
I'm not in the habit of giving interviews in the middle of public parks.
Mr. Carnegie,
Get out of my damned way!
While Carnegie was hounded by the press in Scotland, back in America, the public's outrage was escalating. A new group was emerging. They called themselves the Anarchists. Known for their violent tactics, they were beginning to strike out whenever and wherever they saw injustice. They turned their attention to the massacre at Homestead. and demanded retribution. Their target was the chairman of Carnegie Steel. Henry Frick was determined to get steel production back up to speed. But his enemies had other plans.
Mr. Frick.
Andrew Carnegie would fight to save his steel empire after the bloody attempt on his chairman's life. But just as Carnegie's rivalry with Rockefeller would reach breaking point, a new threat would emerge.
Mr. Morgan, are we on the verge of a depression?
Not if we act wisely.
J.P. Morgan would join forces with a famous inventor.
You're about to become a very busy man, Edison.
To spark a revolution that would change the world forever. But every revolution has a dark side.
I do not want the House of Morgan associated with electricity.
I have a chance to build here. What would it take to light all the homes in New York City? This is what's going to happen. There's going to be an end to this war. The best time to buy is when there's blood on the streets.